This is dHunter and my lovely wife Patricia. We're going to bring you another movie review today. This is going to be the third installment in our reviews of the Star Trek films. Today we're reviewing Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Now this is one of the odd-numbered Star Trek films, and it's a strong belief in the fan base that the odd-numbered Star Trek films are all the bad ones. And there is a little bit of truth to that, although it's sheer coincidence. Star Trek Motion Picture, the first film, it's not bad, but it's kind of boring. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, definitely one of the better odd-numbered films. Star Trek 5, that is undisputedly the worst of all 13 Star Trek films. Then you have Generations. It wasn't bad. Probably about on par with Search for Spock. Then Insurrection. I personally loathe that movie. Then the reboot films of number 11 and 13. And they really weren't that bad. This film is directed by Leonard Nimoy. That's the guy that played Spock in the original series and other films. I believe he asked for his character to be killed off in The Wrath of Khan, but then he had some regrets. He wanted to come back. The fans really wanted him back. Star Trek 2 was a big success. And, spoiler alert, Spock does come back in this film. And with the film being titled Search for Spock, of course he comes back. But he's only in the last few minutes, so it was a perfect movie for him to direct. So the movie starts off with a recap of the end of the second film, which I actually think was a good move. Some people have probably not seen it for a couple of years. Some people have probably not seen it at all. Some people need it refreshed. It showed the end part where Spock sacrifices himself to save the Enterprise. A very touching moment in the second film. And if you don't know he comes back, it'll definitely make you shed a tear. After that, we have Leonard Nimoy narrating the sort of Star Trek intro. Space, the final frontier. I think that was a really cool touch, as it's sort of honoring Spock, who just passed away. Leonard Nimoy is also directing this film. It all just makes perfect sense. When the film itself gets going, it starts off immediately after the second film. Kirk's still in command of the Enterprise. The ship is in ruins. It's all beat up. Blaster marks on the bridge, on the outside of the ship. They're heading back to Earth, to space dock for repairs. After that, we're put in a different area of space. We're introduced to the main antagonist of the film. It's of course a Klingon, played by none other than Christopher Lloyd, who is most known to me as Doc from Back to the Future, although Back to the Future hadn't actually come out yet. This film came out in 1984, Back to the Future in 1985. What do you think of Christopher Lloyd playing a Klingon? Personally, it's hard not to see him as Doc, but with all the makeup on, I really have no problem getting into the character and seeing him as a Klingon. I think they did a pretty good job, and they kind of introduced a lot of new stuff with the Klingons. Pet Targ, Bird of Prey, more stuff in their culture. First time you ever see the bridge for Bird of Prey, and that is seen time and time again over the franchise. What do you think of Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon?
Of course. I mean, I love him. He's wonderful, of course, just like you. You know, it's Doc Brown.
It is Doc Brown, and Christopher Lloyd, I think he's 84 now. He looked old back then, and I swear the guy has not aged in the last 40 years somehow. It's remarkable. But we're introduced to the antagonist. You see a Klingon Bird of Prey decloak. It has Kruge on board. That is Christopher Lloyd's character's name. And I don't know if it's his wife or one of the members of his crew. I get the impression it's maybe his love. She's giving him the information about the Genesis project, and although it doesn't really make sense to me, he destroys the little ship or space station that she was on. I feel like they could have just beamed her right off. I don't really know why she wanted to sacrifice herself. Very Klingon-esque type of thing to do. Give yourself up for the greater purpose, for the Empire, whatever.
Honor.
But I feel like they could have just, bam, beamed her right off that thing. Either way, it kind of shows how dedicated the Klingons are to A, destroying the Federation, and B, getting the Genesis project no matter what it takes. Now this film does introduce us to 3 new ship classes, and as my wife knows, I absolutely love the ships. I'm the kind of guy that, yes, I'll pause it, and then my son and I will be dissecting the scenes and saying what ship's on screen, etc., etc. She loves it too, don't let her fool ya. But we get introduced to a Bird of Prey, which has been in all the other shows. We get introduced to an Oberth class ship, a science vessel, and then the Excelsior class ship. So I love the fact that they're world building the Star Trek universe. First time we really get to see all these new ships. Well, we did the Miranda class in part 2, but now we have numerous different Federation starships. After Kruge gets the information about the Genesis project, it goes back to Kirk on the Enterprise. They finally arrive at Earth, and they're at this giant space dock. Kind of resembles a jellyfish. I love the space dock. It's featured throughout the Next Generation, so it's a large orbiting space station around Earth, and it's obviously there for well over 100 years. The design just sort of screams Starfleet to me and the Federation. You see the damaged Enterprise going inside, and there's some cool Easter eggs here. Like we have Janice Rand, who was also in the first Star Trek film, and she'll be in, I think, the fourth one and the sixth one again. It shows the Enterprise coming in, damage all across the side. She just looks at it, shakes her head. She knows Kirk's up to his old tricks. At the same time, you see the Excelsior-class ship, USS Excelsior. Kirk refers to it as the Great Experiment. They're all sort of in awe of this amazing ship. It's sort of a progression of the Constitution-class ship, which is what the original Enterprise is, and it's just more advanced. It also allegedly has transwarp drive, although we'll see how that turns out. Kirk plans to take the Enterprise back to Genesis, but Starfleet is ignoring his requests. So once they get inside, Chekhov has a sort of alarmed look to him and tells Kirk, "There's a life form in Spock's quarters," and everyone's alarmed. Kirk's like, "Didn't you seal it?" And Chekhov's like, "I sealed it myself." So Kirk goes down to Spock's quarters with security, goes inside, and a little surprised to see, it's Bones, Dr. McCoy in the quarters. He's speaking all kind of gibberish. He's talking to Kirk about, "Bring me home, Kirk." Kirk's like, "You are home, we're on Earth." He's like, "No, bring me to Mount Seleia." "Mount Seleia is on Vulcan. What are you talking about?" He's really confused. Then McCoy passes out in his arms. Now back to Kruge and his bird of prey. He has the information about Genesis. He's reviewing it with a couple members of his crew. Now it's kind of odd. We have Kirk talking about Genesis on this file, which doesn't really make any sense. It's like it was taken from Kirk's quarters in Part 2 when he was telling the senior staff about Genesis. If they had something on file, I don't think Kirk would have anything to do with it in any way, shape, or form. He's not a scientist. Just a little exposition, really for the audience more so. I've always sort of been bothered by that. Doesn't really make a lot of sense why Kirk is the one narrating that in the file. But whatever, I'm being nitpicky here. And then, now we're at the Genesis planet. There's an orbiting ship called the USS Grissom. It's an Oberth-class vessel, a science vessel. The whole area is sort of quarantined, and it's off limits for anybody. This seems to be the only ship allowed to be there. It's a science vessel. They're doing, I don't know, exploring or research on the planet. Some of the characters in the second film are now brought back. We have David Marcus, that's Kirk's son, and then Saavik, who was played by Kirstie Alley in the first film. And I enjoyed Kirstie Alley Saavik, but I actually think this woman did a better job. She's a lot drier, more emotionless, a lot more Vulcan, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I personally hate that they recasted the character. I'm not a fan of when they do stuff like that, but I get it. The show must go on. I'm assuming Kirstie Alley just wanted far too much money. Either that, or she just didn't want to get typecasted into Star Trek. And I get that. I get it. Which actress did you like better? I actually like Kirstie Alley, but I think this woman did even better. And they used her in number 4 as well. So there was, I don't know,
that consistency at least.
A little bit more consistency moving forward, but I'm not a fan of recasting. That goes for really any film franchise. Yes, sometimes there are reasons, money, availability, etc. Which actress did you prefer?
Definitely the second one. Kirstie Alley looked like she had too much emotion. Plus, I'm used to her in Cheers, so...
No, I agree. It's hard for me necessarily to see her as someone else. Don't get me wrong, that was a long time ago. She looked quite a bit different than I'm sort of familiar with her looking. But yeah, she, for a Vulcan, and she was complaining the whole time about how human they are, but she definitely had a lot more emotion than one would have expected. Now we're in Kirk's apartment. Him and the rest of the senior staff are celebrating a successful mission. Yes, they lost Spock, but they did save the entire ship and crew, and that's a good 400 people. They also stopped Khan from getting Genesis and doing God knows what with it. So they're all having a drink, and they're interrupted by Sarek, Spock's father, coming in. Talk about consistency. I love the fact that they got the same actor to reprise his role as Sarek from the original show. They actually also got the same actor to come back and reprise his role for, I think, 3 different episodes of The Next Generation. Vulcans live for a very long time, so even though Sarek is kind of an old man in the original show and the movies, he's still alive about 100 years later in the Next Generation. Although in the Star Trek franchise now, Sarek has been played by numerous people between the reboot films and Star Trek Discovery. Now, Sarek keeps asking Kirk, why did you abandon my son? Why did you leave him on Genesis? And Kirk's kind of confused, like, what do you mean? He's dead. Like, why would we bring him back? And he's like, he would have asked you to bring him back. He would have made the last request to you. And Kirk's just confused, looking like, what are you talking about? He didn't make any sort of request. And Sarek just says he would have asked the last person he was with to bring him back. Were you the last person he was with? He's like, yes. Still super confused. So Sarek asked if he can mind meld with Kirk. And then he does. Mind melds with Kirk. Finds out, no, Spock's Katra is not in Kirk's mind. He is truly gone and lost forever. Although you'd think at this point, it'd be kind of obvious to Kirk that, hey, McCoy over here thinks he's a Vulcan, he's acting like Spock, wants to go to Mount Seleia. But I guess it's a lot less obvious to him than it is to us, the fans. I don't know. Now back on the USS Grissom, David and the Savick detect a life sign on Genesis. They want to go down and check it out, but of course, the captain is very reluctant. They want to beam it up, and he says no. Then they ask to go down, and he reluctantly allows them. They go down to check out this life sign. They find a Spock's coffin or torpedo, and they detect some life on it. Little microbes had evolved into large, disgusting larva-looking things. I guess the Genesis effect on them. They open up the torpedo, and Spock's not there. It's simply his robe. They're very confused. Now back on Earth, we're in sort of a bar-type setting. We have Bones trying to hire some ship to take him to Genesis. Now this is a forbidden topic. Genesis is a forbidden planet. The topic is off limits. They made that very clear. So he's trying to pay someone to take him to Genesis. Of course, he's kind of avoiding, telling where he's going. Finally, the guy's just like, where do you want to go to? He says, Genesis. And he's pretty loud at this point, getting kind of irate. It's a combination of Spock and Bones together, and they are direct opposites. So it's kind of amusing how irritated he gets, but he's also talking about logic the whole time. A member of Starfleet Security overhears them, of course, since this topic is off limits. He sits down with him, kind of starts telling him, hey, we don't want to talk about this right now. And McCoy's just getting louder and louder. Starfleet Security asks him to go with him. Now, he tries to do the Vulcan neck pinch to make him pass out, and it just doesn't work, which I feel like he should still be able to do it as long as he knows how to do it, which Spock would. It's been established in the Star Trek franchise that non-Vulcans can do it. But you know what? It was amusing, and it kind of had a nice touch. So then I believe he gets arrested, maybe taken to a mental facility. I'm not 100% sure.
Like a secured psychiatric facility.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously not in the right frame of mind, but no one seems to believe in the whole Vulcan, Katra, soul, all that sort of stuff. And I get it, but typically in the Star Trek franchise, the Federation is a little more open to different alien cultures and how they work. But, you know, whatever. Now back to the Genesis planet. David and Savick are on the planet. They're looking for Spock, or whatever the life sign is. Eventually they do find a young Spock, sort of a Vulcan boy or child, which is kind of odd. I get Genesis bringing back to life, but kind of making him start as a baby and work his way to adulthood. I mean, I guess it's a rebirth, kind of like Genesis is. A little bit odd, but of course Spock is rapidly aging because, as we'll find out shortly in the film, David had altered the formula for the Genesis project. He added protomatter, which is very unstable, so effectively the whole project doesn't work. It's a fail. And now back on Earth, Kirk is watching some footage of the end of Star Trek II, where Spock had died. He keeps backing up a little bit, and finally sees the part where Spock, I don't know if exactly mind melds with McCoy, but he touches his head and transplants his Katra to him. At that point, Kirk realizes McCoy is the one that has the Katra, so he decides he's going to break McCoy out, he's going to steal the Enterprise, they're going to take him back to Genesis, get his body, and then take that to Vulcan and restore his Katra, or at least release him into the afterlife or whatever the Vulcans do. So he gets his old crew, him and Sulu. They go to the brig or the prison facility, and mildly amusing scene where Sulu is sort of taunting the security guy. Security guy's giant, gets up, is kind of like, watch it, tiny. Kirk goes in there, gets McCoy out, and then you see Sulu sort of beating up this giant security guard. Don't call me tiny. Mildly amusing. They go to Uhura. She beams them onto the Enterprise, and you have the whole crew there, minus Uhura. At this point, Kirk tells them, you guys don't have to go any further. It's just going to be me. You guys don't need to ruin your careers. They're like, we're with you all the way. And he's like, good. I need you anyway. So they effectively steal the Enterprise, which was previously said to be decommissioned at this point, which really sucks because that's the most famous ship in the Star Trek franchise. They said it was active for 20 years, although I'm pretty sure it had been active for quite a bit longer than that. If you go through all the different captains, April and Pike and Kirk and Decker. But I'm getting a little off topic here. They get on the Enterprise, decide to steal the ship. I don't really understand how 5 people can operate the entire ship, and why do they have to have a crew of 450 normally? Whatever. They take the ship, fire it up, they start to leave space dock. Now, the captain of the Excelsior is informed someone is stealing the Enterprise. I remember he's laying in his bed, and they're like, red alert. He's like, red alert? How can you have a red alert in space dock? So they take the Excelsior, which is supposed to have this amazing transwarp drive, which should be way faster than the Enterprise's warp drive. They start to chase him. He hails him, says, Kirk, stop this. You'll never sit in the captain's chair again. You'll lose your career, lose your admiral status. Of course, Kirk's going to do anything for his friend Spock. They start to go. Enterprise goes to warp. Excelsior prepares for transwarp, and it fails. The ship just doesn't work. And then you see on the Enterprise, Scotty has all the microchips from the Excelsior. Now, it does make me, as a big Star Trek fan, wonder, did the transwarp actually work? Did they have transwarp drive? Transwarp drive is established to be quite different in Star Trek Voyager. Kind of puts you in all places at the same time. Amazing fast, but there are side effects. Transwarp is definitely inconsistent in the Star Trek universe. But I guess they just accept that it doesn't work and they abandon it on the Excelsior. They don't even try to fix it. I don't know. Maybe it never worked to begin with. It's a little vague and kind of confusing, especially if you look at the franchise as a whole. Now, back around the Genesis planet, we see the bird of prey decloak. It quickly destroys the USS Grissom. Honestly, thought it should have taken more than 1 or 2 shots. They did have their shields up. Kruge is pissed at his Klingon warrior. He ends up vaporizing him because he wants the Genesis project, and he thinks that has been ruined at this point. Another Klingon speaks up, where he pulls his disruptor out, points at him and says, say the wrong thing. The guy's like, well, there are 2 scientists on the planet that might have the information you want. And Kruge is like, okay, you did say the right thing. So they decide to get those scientists. Meanwhile, on the planet, you see David and Saavik and Spock. They've actually found Spock at this point, and he's going through the Pon farr because he's rapidly aging. Every 7 years of a Vulcan's adult life, they have to mate, or they'll possibly die. Now, Saavik is helping him through this, but not in the way you think. She's just using some of her sort of mental powers to kind of calm him down and get him through it. Then you have the Enterprise. They're getting close to Genesis. Kirk is trying to hail the Grissom, but they're not responding. He's kind of wondering why they're not responding. Maybe they're under orders not to answer the Enterprise. When they finally arrive in the system, they detect this big distortion, and Kirk's asking, is it big enough to cloak a ship? And just as they're starting to theorize it's a cloaked vessel, bam, bird of prey decloaks. But Kirk knew what was going on. They had enough time to detect a distortion that it would raise shields and weapons, and sort of uncharacteristic of Starfleet, he goes guns a-blazing, doesn't even try to hail the bird of prey, and I actually like that. They've learned a lesson with the Klingons in the past. Hits him with a couple of direct shots of torpedoes, does some serious damage to the bird of prey. Bird of prey gets a couple shots off of the Enterprise, and they're both pretty much disabled. Kruge demands all knowledge of the Genesis project, etc., etc. Kirk is more or less refusing. Kruge says he will kill one of the hostages. He currently has Klingons on the planet, and they have Spock, Saavik, and David under their control. Mm-hmm. Now, Kirk doesn't really have time to even respond. Crew just says, okay, time's up. He's going to kill one. You see the Klingon down there with his knife. He's about to kill one of the three. He has his knife right behind Saavik. He's about to stab her. And then David heroically tries to save her life. But of course, he's a puny human. No match for a Klingon warrior. And unfortunately, they get into a really brief skirmish. And David is killed. Saavik gets on the intercom. Tells Kirk in a very dry, Vulcan-type way, David is dead. And then Kirk, in a stereotypical William Shatner-type acting, just sort of falls out of his chair, misses it, hits the floor. Klingon bastards, you killed my son. And it is sad. He finally met David after all these years, and they were just kind of starting to get to know each other and get along a little bit. And now David is dead. Yes, I'm happy they didn't kill Spock again. And honestly, if I were to pick, I would have rather Saavik live than David. But still, it is sad. As a father, you can imagine how that feels. At this point, Kruge asks for them to surrender. They pretty much have no choice, but they have to agree. So they agree to beam down to the planet, and then Kruge beams his warriors onto the ship. It's kind of a cool scene. You see him transport out. The Klingons pretty much transport at the same time. Ship is totally empty. Ship mentions it's being controlled by computers, the warrior, and Kruge says, what is it saying? He said, the computer's talking. And you hear it, 10, 9, 8. Kirk and co. had done the self-destruct sequence right before they beamed off. Clever move on their part. Then Kruge says, get out! Of course, there's like 4 seconds, so they're not getting out of there. Although, you'd think he could just beam them right off the bridge and get them out of there. But, you know what, whatever, that's fine. Then we have this iconic moment where the USS Enterprise, from the entire original series and the first 3 films, is destroyed. Sort of gut-wrenching. I mean, that ship is almost like another character in itself, and to watch it just get destroyed like that, it really sucks. But they did kill the majority of the Klingon crew, so it wasn't all for nothing. They did achieve their goal. But now we have Kirk, his staff, and then Saavik and Spock all on the Genesis planet. And the Genesis planet is being destroyed. Right before David died, he did tell him, don't give them anything they want. This Genesis project is a failure. So, they're all stuck down there. Kirk contacts Kruge and basically tells him, hey, if you want Genesis, you need to beam my people up there, and you come down here, and I can give you everything you want. So he beams the entire staff up onto his bird of prey. Then, except for Spock, he's down there on the planet. Kirk says, what of the Vulcan? Beam him up there. And Kruge, of course, being a dick like Klingons always are, says, no, I won't do it. Kirk's like, why not? Because you want me to do it. At this point, it's just Kirk and Kruge left on the Genesis planet. Everything is being destroyed around them. Everything's falling apart. Kirk has an old school type fight with Kruge. Kind of crappy William Shatner style, just like the old show. But in some ways I appreciate that. They fight to the death. Kruge ends up falling off a ledge and dying. So Kirk is left there with Spock. Really no way to get off the planet. He finds a Klingon's communicator. He says something in Klingon, and they get beamed up to the bird of prey. That was a little odd, because you'd think the Klingon officer up there would be like, that's not Kruge's voice. Beam up anyway. So when they arrive at the bird of prey, there's 1 Klingon left up there, I believe, and, 4 or 5 Starfleet officers. So, of course, they took over the bird of prey. I remember Kirk's on the bridge. He says to the Klingon something like, either help me or die. And the Klingon says, I'm not worthy to live. And Kirk's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Well, we'll kill you later. So then they decide to take this bird of prey to Vulcan. They have Spock. They have McCoy with Spock's Katra. They're going to bring him to Mount Selea, to Sarek. And originally they were just trying to bring his Katra back there to kind of put him to peace. But now they have his body and his Katra. So we're going to bring Spock back to life. So now we're on Vulcan. Uhura was actually already there waiting for them. We have the entire cast and crew reunited. So the Vulcans, they take Spock and McCoy. Long story short, they're going to take the Katra out of McCoy, put it back into Spock. You have this priestess woman, who I think is the same one for the first film when she was doing Spock's ceremony. So, they take the two of them away, and then, I don't know, it's the next day or so, Spock comes out, and the whole crew is excited to see him. But Spock seems distant, confused. He doesn't seem like the Spock we remember. It's almost like, I don't know, he's been changed, or just not the same. He's talking to Kirk. Kirk's explained to him the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, and how he saved the ship. And then Spock, almost like he's sort of remembering, he says, "I am and always shall be your friend, Jim. Your name is Jim." And then, right when he says that, the Star Trek theme starts playing, and it's a really good sort of feeling moment. Spock's back, the whole crew's back, everything's good to go again. Well, except for the fact that they're already court-martialed and the Enterprise destroyed, blah, 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 blah. But it is really cool, and it's a good feeling moment, and that's pretty much how the film ends, leading into the fourth film. And that more or less concludes the film. I like Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. I don't love it, but it's way better than just a good film. Not great, but good. Now, how do you top Wrath of Khan? That movie is fantastic. The special effects, the story, the drama, the acting, it's all so well done. I don't think that movie's even been topped today in the Star Trek franchise. Yes, I personally prefer First Contact to Wrath of Khan, but that's just me. There's definitely some cool stuff in Star Trek 3, cool ideas, but it's definitely a letdown after Star Trek 2, which was just so good. Overall, the movie, if I were to rate it, my first thought was give it a 7 out of 10, but I think that's too high. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's probably one of the best of the odd-numbered Star Trek films. It's genuinely a good Star Trek film, and it does a good job of bringing Spock back. Yeah, some of it doesn't fully make sense, but I'm cool with how it all turned out. What did you think about the film as a whole?
I enjoyed it. Still was not as good as Wrath of Khan, of course. I would probably go with a 6 on it. I still enjoy the scientific aspect of everything. The cloak, the Genesis planet, the issues that arise with it, the fact that it is a failed experiment. But then also bringing back the new life of Spock and seeing how that grows and matures.
I mean, Spock is a fan favorite, so either they're going to continue the franchise, a person short, or they're going to bring him back to life, which is what they did. Now, everyone thinks of Captain Kirk, William Shatner, but you always think of Spock. I don't even know which one is exactly the more popular, more well-known character in the Star Trek franchise. I'd say it's definitely Kirk, Spock, and Bones. Bones is probably the least popular of those three. Still a cool character, but Spock, being the Vulcan, the pointy ear, is very unique, and then Kirk, he's the main man. Everyone knows those two are. I really enjoyed the fact they brought Sarek back. One person that was missing, Carol Marcus, not really sure where she went, just randomly disappeared. You'd think she would be running front line, researching the Genesis planet, because she's a subject matter expert there, but whatever. Her son David and Savick are the ones doing that. I assume that she couldn't get the actress to come back for whatever reason. Also, I didn't like the recasting of Savick. Yes, I actually liked this one better, but simply the fact they recasted the role displeased me. Mm-hmm. Now, cool stuff, introducing the Bird of Prey, the Excelsior, that is awesome. This is the first time I think we see the Klingons cloaking. And the story behind that is, they actually got the cloaking technology from the Romulans, but that was all done off screen. It is canon, though. Cool stuff. Cool film. The second film in the trilogy of films, 2, 3, 4. The next film is going to be Star Trek 4, Voyage Home. Now, it's a fan favorite, although me personally, I would have much rather had something in a more modern setting. I mean modern, like going back in time to modern like now. I mean modern as in the, 2260s or whatever time period this takes place in. And the humor, falls a little short. Of course, there's almost no ships in that one. That's a huge thing that I like. It's cool they still have the Bird of Prey, and I like the fact that they are still wearing the same outfits from this film and the fourth one, so it's like it just completely just keeps going and continues on. So keep an eye out. We'll be reviewing that one sometime in the near future. We're taking our time with these things. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say about the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional action figure reviews from me, or movie reviews, press subscribe. I do appreciate when you do that. Once again, this is dHunter, my lovely wife Patricia. Star Trek fans, been watching the movies. We're going to keep watching them. We will review each of the 13 films, although it's going to take some time. And maybe we'll review some more films after that. We'll see. So, live long and prosper, and we'll talk to you guys soon.